She flinched when I touched her. It happened in front of everyone. Like a reflex, she forgot to hide. My hand had barely reached her shoulder when her body jerked forward and away, fast and sharp, like she'd brushed against a hot stove. A few people from the gallery turned at the movement. Someone laughed softly, thinking it was a joke. She laughed too, a half-second late, already stepping toward the wine table as if nothing had happened. I stood where I was, hands still raised in the air, like I had missed a cue no one told me about. The event was hers. Olivia loved crowded rooms, soft lighting, and the constant hum of strangers saying her name. She moved through the gallery like she owned the walls. She introduced artists, hugged donors, touched arms and shoulders and backs with easy warmth. Every time someone leaned in, she leaned closer. Except when it was me. Ethan was there, of course. He stood near the tall windows, holding a glass he never seemed to finish. People gathered around him the way they always did. He had that voice from the podcast, smooth, confident, like everything he said had already been approved by an audience. When Olivia crossed the room to greet him, she didn't flinch. Her hand rested on his arm longer than the moment required. They leaned toward each other in that quiet way people do when they think nobody is watching. I didn't walk over. I didn't call her name. I stayed near the doorway, listening to the echo of that tiny movement replay in my head. The quick recoil, the instinctive distance. Later, while guests thanked her and shook my hand like I was part of the display, she never came back to stand beside me. Not once. When we finally left, she talked the entire drive home about installations, donors, and next month's event. Her hands moved when she spoke. Animated. Alive. They never reached for mine. The first time Ethan started coming over during the week, Olivia called it a creative adjustment. She said the podcast needed more structure. She said weekends weren't enough anymore. She said people were starting to notice them. I remember standing in the kitchen while she explained it, wiping with dust from my hands with a rag. Ethan sat at the table, scrolling through his phone like the conversation didn't involve him. He smiled when she said his name. He didn't look at me. They recorded in the living room at first. 2 microphones, a small mixer, cables running across the rug I had vacuumed that morning. Their voices carried down the hallway while I worked in the garage. His laugh came easy. Hers followed, softer, then louder. After a few weeks, the recordings got shorter. He started arriving earlier. Sometimes in the late morning. Sometimes right after lunch. On days I was scheduled at the workshop across town, restoring antique cabinets for a hotel renovation. Olivia began texting less during the day. When she did, it was brief. A reminder to pick up supplies. A photo of a new installation concept. Never a question about when I'd be home. One afternoon, I forgot a set of chisels and turned back halfway to the shop. I didn't call. I just drove. Ethan's car was already in the driveway. The blinds were half closed. Not all the way. Just enough to suggest privacy without fully committing to it. I stayed in the truck longer than necessary. The engine idled. No music. No phone in my hand. Through the narrow gap between the blinds, I saw movement. Close. Familiar. I turned the engine off before I saw enough to name it. I didn't go inside. I drove back to work and finished sanding a walnut dresser until my hands went numb. I did not ask her about that afternoon. Instead, I started noticing patterns. Ethan's car appeared in the driveway on days the podcast was not scheduled. Olivia began lighting the cedar candle I bought her only when he was there. The living room furniture shifted slightly each time I came home, like something heavy had been moved and carefully placed back. One evening, she left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while she showered. A message preview lit up the screen. His name. No emojis. Just a sentence that read, "Same time tomorrow. He'll be gone, right?" I did not touch the laptop at first. I stood there and watched the screen dim. Then I tapped the trackpad once. The thread was short and direct. No poetry. No drama. It was about timing. About parking around the corner instead of the driveway. About keeping the microphone set up to make it look consistent. About afternoons. There were photos too. Not explicit. Just familiar spaces taken from angles I had never seen. Our couch. Our kitchen island. My workshop door in the background, closed. I closed the laptop exactly the way I had found it. That night, she lay beside me in bed, scrolling through her phone, the light from the screen washing over her face. I reached for her again, slower this time. Careful. She did not flinch. She just shifted away, claiming she was tired. In the dark, I stared at the ceiling and listened to her breathing even out. My chest felt steady. My hands were still. The next morning, before leaving for work, I called a property manager about a small warehouse space with a loft above it. I asked how soon it would be available. The warehouse came with concrete floors, high windows, and a narrow staircase leading to a small room above the storage area. It smelled like dust and old paint. It was quiet. I signed the lease without negotiating. Over the next few days, I moved my tools first. Planers, clamps, the antique lathe I inherited from my grandfather. I told Olivia I needed more space for a large restoration contract. She nodded without looking up from her phone. She did not ask for the address. By the end of the week, there was a mattress on the loft floor, a folding chair, and a coffee maker plugged into the wall near the sink. I left a toothbrush in the bathroom downstairs. The first night, I did not come home. She texted close to midnight. She asked if I was still at the shop. I replied that I had decided to stay late and sleep there. She sent back a short message telling me not to overwork myself. The second night, no message came until morning. By the third night, Ethan's car was parked openly in the driveway when I drove past the house on my way to the warehouse. Not around the corner. Not half hidden. I did not slow down. I transferred the utilities into my name at the warehouse. I updated my business address. I changed the shipping location for my materials. A week after I stopped sleeping in that house, I contacted a locksmith. The apartment had been mine before Olivia, purchased years before we met. When the new locks clicked into place, the sound echoed in the hallway like something sealing shut. That evening, I sent her a formal notice of separation with a move-out date. No explanation, just terms. She did not call at first. The notice was delivered electronically and by certified mail. Clean language. Clear date. 30 days to vacate. No accusations. No commentary. An hour after it was marked as received, my phone lit up with her name. I let it ring. A message followed. She wrote that there had to be a mistake. She wrote that changing the locks was extreme. She wrote that we needed to talk. I did not respond. Later that afternoon, Ethan called. Not about the house. About the podcast. He left a voicemail saying the upcoming sponsor was asking questions. He mentioned that listeners had noticed the silence. He said it would look bad if we stopped without explanation. I deleted the message. That weekend, he posted a solo episode. I listened to the first few minutes while sanding a tabletop in the warehouse. His voice sounded tighter than usual. He referred to unexpected personal shifts and thanked the audience for patience. 2 days later, I received an email from a mutual acquaintance who worked in media production. He wrote that Ethan had pitched a separate show behind my back months earlier, using our shared concept and recordings as leverage. He attached a forwarded thread as proof. I read it once. Then I forwarded the email to the network contact listed in Ethan's messages. No commentary, just the attachment. By the end of the week, Ethan's post stopped. Olivia began calling again. Not about love. Not about us. She said Ethan was dealing with something. She said contracts were falling through. She asked what I had done. I had not raised my voice. I had not confronted him. I simply stopped protecting what he was standing on. The first time she showed up at the warehouse, she stood outside the loading door like she wasn't sure she was allowed to knock. I saw her through the upper window before she saw me. She looked smaller without the gallery lights and curated crowd around her. No heels. No event badge. Just jeans and a loose sweater, arms crossed tight against her chest. I finished tightening the clamps on a cabinet door before walking down. When I opened the door, she stepped forward too quickly, like she was afraid I would close it again. She said we needed to talk in person. She said this had gone too far. I did not invite her in. She glanced past me at the work tables, the stacked lumber, the narrow staircase leading up to the loft. She asked if I was actually living there. I said yes. Her voice changed then. Softer. She said Ethan had complicated things. She said he was under pressure. She said none of this was supposed to turn into a disaster. I listened without interrupting. She reached for my arm the way she used to in crowded rooms, but this time I stepped back before her fingers made contact. The movement was small. Her hand hovered in the air for a second, then dropped. She asked if I was doing this to punish her. I told her the move-out date remained the same. That evening, I drove past the apartment again. Her car was there. Ethan's was not. The next morning, a mutual friend from the art committee texted me. She said Olivia had left a board meeting early after someone asked why Ethan was no longer attached to their upcoming project. She said the room had gone quiet. No one defended her. The calls started coming earlier in the day. Not from Ethan. From her. She left voicemails now instead of texts. Her voice sounded unsteady, like she was speaking while pacing. She said people were talking. She said sponsors had pulled back from one of her upcoming exhibits. She said the board was reconsidering structure. She never used the word affair. She never said his name unless she had to. One afternoon she showed up again at the warehouse, this time without makeup, hair tied back, eyes tired in a way I had never seen. She didn't try to step inside. She just stood there and asked if we could sit somewhere neutral. Coffee. A park. Anywhere but here. I told her I was working. She said Ethan had stopped answering her calls. She said he was sorting things out. She said she didn't expect him to disappear like that. I wiped sawdust from the table and kept my voice even. I told her the move-out date had not changed. For the first time, she did not argue. She just looked at the staircase behind me. She asked if I was sleeping well. I said yes. That night, I saw them together by accident. I had driven past the apartment to check the mailbox before forwarding the address permanently. As I slowed near the curb, I saw Olivia standing outside the building. Ethan was with her. There was no caution anymore. No half-closed blinds. No parking around the corner. They stood close. Not touching, but close enough that it didn't matter. I kept driving. It was not a discovery. It was confirmation. I did not feel anger. Just finality. She came to the warehouse one last time before the move-out date. There was no pacing this time. No fast talking. She stood still, hands at her sides, like someone waiting for a verdict already decided. She said she had ended it. She did not look at me when she said his name. She said he had not fought for her. She said when his contracts fell apart and invitations stopped, he blamed stress, timing, misunderstandings. Then he stopped showing up. I listened from the workbench, sanding a chair leg smooth. She said she thought I would yell. She said she expected questions, accusations, something loud enough to match what she had done. I did not give her that. She stepped closer, slower than before. This time I did not move away. I just did not move toward her either. She said the flinch had not been about disgust. She said it had been guilt. She said she was already involved with him by then, and my hand felt like a mirror she could not face. The air between us felt thinner. She asked if there was any version of this where I did not file for divorce. I set the sandpaper down carefully and wiped my hands on a cloth. I told her the paperwork was already submitted. I told her the move-out date still stood. I told her I would not drag this through months of arguing. She swallowed and nodded, like she had expected that answer. Before leaving, she looked up at the loft again. She asked if I ever planned to come back home. I said I already had. The day she moved out, I did not go to the apartment. I had hired a small crew to stand by while she collected her things. The lease, the mortgage, the deed had always been in my name. There was nothing to argue about. The instructions were simple. Pack what was hers. Leave what was not. She texted once that morning to say she was there. I did not respond. Around midday, one of the movers called to confirm that the bedroom was cleared. He said she had taken the artwork, her clothes, the books from her office. He asked what to do with the podcast equipment. I told him to leave it. By evening, the apartment was empty in a way it had never been before. No scent of her cedar candle. No framed exhibition posters leaning against the hallway wall. No extra pair of shoes by the door. I walked through it slowly after the movers left. The couch was still there. The kitchen island. The faint outline on the wall where her favorite painting had hung. My phone buzzed while I stood in the living room. She wrote that she had signed a short-term rental across town. She wrote that the silence in the new place felt louder than she expected. She wrote that she kept reaching for her phone out of habit. I locked the door behind me when I left. That night at the warehouse, I set up the old lathe and began restoring a damaged oak table someone had nearly thrown away. The next morning, she posted a single photo on her social media. No caption, just an empty gallery space. The divorce finalized without a scene. No courtroom drama. No shouting in hallways. Just signatures exchanged through attorneys and a stamped document confirming what had already been true for months. She asked to meet once more before it was official. We met in a quiet cafe near the river. Neutral ground, like she had requested before. She arrived early. I could tell by the way her coffee had already gone cold. She looked different. Not broken. just stripped of something that used to orbit around her. The constant movement. The certainty. She said people had stopped calling as often. She said the board replaced her with an interim curator for stability. She said Ethan had moved to another city after his contracts dissolved. She delivered the updates without anger, like reading headlines about someone else's life. She told me the apartment felt too quiet now. She said she finally understood that the flinch had not started that night in the gallery. It had started the first time she let someone cross a line in our living room and chose not to stop it. I listened. She asked if I hated her. I told her no. She asked if disappearing had been my way of getting even. I told her I did not disappear. I simply stopped showing up where I was not respected. The words settled between us without echo. When we stood to leave, she hesitated like she might reach for me again. She didn't. I walked back to the warehouse that evening and locked the door behind me. I did not look back.